am Sara Moses, the host of the Do It Now podcast. And today I will be interviewing Nancy Landrum, who is the creator of the Millionaire Marriage Club. And I cannot wait to hear about that and what that all means. And I think you're basically a relationship expert, correct? Is that right, Nancy? So I'm going to throw it over to you and let you tell us all about your background and how you started this.
Gee, if I want to go way back, I'll go back to 3 years old when I decided I'm going to have a more loving marriage than it looked like my parents had.
Wow.
And then when I learned to read, I saw myself writing books to help other people have better relationships. I don't know where that calling came from, but it was very clear. Now, what I didn't know, and was probably a good thing, I didn't know was the 40 years of really tough lessons that I would go through before I'd have anything worth writing about. My first husband died very young, unexpectedly, left me with 2 baby boys. That wasn't my life plan. Took me quite a while to regain my balance. I was a single mom for 13 years before I met and married Jim Landrum, who was also a widower. He had 3 children. We had 4 teenagers between us, and we decided that we would continue single parenting them because it was a terrible time in their lives to try to make them accept another parental figure. But
Smart.
we wanted to co-parent his 8-year-old son. We had very different definitions of a good parent. He was
Mm.
far more permissive than me. I was
Mhm.
far more into rules and consequences with a lot of love, of course.
Mhm. Mhm.
But when I was raising 2 boys by myself, I was terrified of losing control of them. So I was really into boundaries and
Mhm.
consequences, and Jim was far more permissive. So we began kind of haggling over the parenting that his 8-year-old son, I thought, needed.
Mhm.
And gradually that just escalated into almost daily fights
Oh, wow.
because I was sure I was right. My goal was to convince him that he was wrong. Jim's
Mm.
goal was also to convince me that I was wrong, that he was right.
Mhm.
Of course, is the foundation of all fights.
Mhm. Interesting.
Yes. So we kept going for about 6 years before we decided we're not going to resolve this. It's getting worse. We
Mhm.
need help. It took
Mhm.
us a year to find effective help.
Mhm.
3 different therapists who were not helpful. We read books, we went to pastoral counselors, we went to workshops, and
Mhm.
nothing seemed to fit what we needed until we found a coach that
Mhm.
began to teach us how to deliver any message, say anything we wanted to say, but say it in a respectful way so that it
Wow.
trigger defensiveness. So my up until then, my favorite communication method were sarcastic put downs or yelling.
Oh.
And Jim's favorite was the accusatory you. Why didn't you do that? You should have done this.
Mhm.
And of course, we just triggered reactions in each
Mhm.
other that escalated into fights. We sat
Mm.
down in our room to talk about our hot issue,
Mhm.
the methods that our coach was teaching us. And it was
Mhm.
a little like trying to communicate in a foreign language. It was
Wow.
using words and combinations of words and tone of voice that were
Mhm.
unfamiliar to us by that time.
Right.
But we made it through 45 minutes without it escalating into a fight for the first time ever.
Wonderful. So I want to make sure that we don't skip over this too quickly because I want to go back. You said the main lesson that she taught you was to say things in a respectful way.
Yes.
And that was basically the main point that she taught you, and you were able to move forward and have
Well,
these.
he taught us what respectful sounded like.
Right, right. Because if you don't know,
We didn't know. So we learned to say, when you do this, I feel, rather than you hurt me, you shouldn't have done that. Or to say something like, my opinion is,
Mm,
or what I wish we could do is,
mhm,
rather than you're wrong, I'm right, get on board with me and everything will be fine.
mhm.
So it was rephrasing words in a really simple way,
Right.
but it was very hard to do to overcome the bad habits that had been practiced in our brains for years.
Mhm.
That was the hard part.
I can imagine because it's like a bad habit that we all get into if we've been, and I'm sure there's many of us who, once you're stuck talking that way for years and years, and maybe some people were spoken to that way by their parents too, and that's where they learned it, right? So that's something you've really got to be conscious of doing it. You've got to be intentional. You got to be very careful what words are coming out of your mouth, correct?
I had to stop. Well, I felt for a few weeks, I felt like I was in a verbal straitjacket.
Right.
Like I can't let anything go out of my mouth until I review it. How is this going to sound to Jim?
Mm-hmm.
It aligning with the method that our coach was teaching us.
Right.
And another thing, well, that first day when we talked without it escalating into a fight, it was exhausting because we were both having to think through everything we said.
Right.
So we agreed to set it aside and come back to it the next day. We
Mm-hmm.
stood, and Jim held his arms open to me. And as I stepped into his arms, he said, that felt so respectful. Let's do our best to treat each other with respect. So we both made this commitment to treat
Mm-hmm.
each other with respect, which
Mm-hmm.
changed my goal. My goal is no longer to convince him he's wrong. I'm right.
Right. Right.
My goal is to make sure that whatever comes out of my mouth is respectful.
Wow. Wow. This
We
is
never
big.
had another fight. Yeah, wow.
I mean, I'm like, mic drop on you because it sounds like because though it was two people who were both serious about it and committed to doing it and very intentional,
Yeah.
committed to each other, obviously, because you both wanted things to be better. But it sounds like you were motivated because just by doing it that one day, even for 45 minutes, how much improvement you had in your relationship, how much better you both felt, right?
So good. We were so, there was one advantage to waiting. I shouldn't even say this
Mm,
online, but there was an advantage that we were so desperate. We were so tired of hurting each other and being hurt.
mhm,
We were ready to follow any instruction that made sense to us. And when it worked that one day for 45 minutes,
mhm.
also made the agreement that if Jim heard sarcastic tone of voice coming out of my mouth, he could respectfully say, Nancy, I want to hear what you say, but please say it more respectfully.
Oh, good. That's
And if Jim, if he started his finger pointing you, I would just respectfully say, please say that without the accusatory you.
mm,
He would change. So we were literally coaching each other to stay within the boundaries of respectful speech and tone of voice.
mm,
And because of that, it only took about 4 or 5 weeks for us to develop the habit of speaking to each other respectfully. And it
mm.
was only a week or two after that when we'd had several, many, what I call skilled discussions now,
Field discussions,
respectful
I like that.
discussions, that we agreed on a solution to our issue that worked for both of us.
Mhm, mhm.
So I think Gary Chapman says there are no problems that cannot be solved. There are only people unwilling to solve them. And I had a client just last week tell me skilled discussions are magic. If any two people are willing to learn how to have a skilled discussion, they can resolve anything.
Wow, that's so
This
good.
was a client after only, I think, 5 or 6 sessions.
Wonderful. What a great skill to have. And it sounds both simple, and yet it requires, I think the complex part of it, or the complicated part of it, is it requires really being atta- as you said, I mean, that first day you felt like a straitjacket, being very careful what comes out of your mouth.
Right.
So it's almost pausing and really thinking about what we say
Yes.
before we say it. And then also being less reactive, because the other person is not going to be perfect at this right away either, as you said.
Well, we
So,
also had to learn good anger management skills because we could trigger each other in an instant, like many couples do.
mhm,
Yes. The guiding principle for both of us, but I'll speak for myself. If
mhm,
I felt myself getting so angry that I was incapable of speaking respectfully, then
mhm,
I'd say, I need 15 minutes to calm down.
mm,
And I would leave the conversation and go write nasty things in my journal or take a
yes,
walk,
yes,
calm down. But
very,
I also would come back when I said I would.
yes, very
So
important.
just walking away isn't a good timeout.
Right.
You need to tell your partner, I need a timeout because I'm afraid of what I'm about to say. I'll regret it. And give your partner X amount of time, whatever amount of time you think you need to calm
Mm-hmm,
yourself down, and then
mm-hmm.
come back when you say you will.
Wow, that's very important. Yeah. These are such good things, and I'm assuming that you had great success in your marriage with this, because you went on to write a few books. Is that correct?
Well, a couple of years later, when our marriage was completely stable, we'd had 2 years without a fight, no harsh words between us.
Hmm.
Jim suggested that we begin teaching a class to teach other couples what we had learned because we had so much trouble finding effective help. So
Right.
we began teaching a class called How to Stay Married and Love It. We wanted to stay married the way our parents had, but we wanted to love it more than it appeared they did.
Right.
And he was so supportive of me, suggesting I go back and finish my master's degree, which I,
Hmm. Hmm.
after graduation, I wrote the book, How to Stay Married and Love It.
How to Stay Married and Love It. Oh, what a great title. Because isn't that it? I mean, we know a lot of people that stay married, but they're not enjoying it, maybe not close.
The
Uh,
point is not just to stay married, but to
right.
love. So here's the book.
Oh, wonderful. How to Stay Married and Love It. I love it. I
Solving,
love it. I want to get it.
yeah, solving the puzzle of a soulmate marriage.
So
This
good.
book covers the four corner pieces, the foundation, and then
Hmm.
the second subsequent book covers the rest of the puzzle pieces.
And what is the title of the next book?
How to stay married and love it even more.
Even more. Great. Wonderful. And so then with this knowledge and these books, you began coaching, private coaching.
Began private coaching couples who found it hard to put things into practice that they were hearing in class. They needed more support.
Hmm.
Then in 2004, Jim was diagnosed with terminal cancer, passed
Hmm.
away a year later.
So
And
sorry.
after the dust settled, after things kind of stabilized, I realized there was nothing else I cared passionately about doing with my life.
Hmm.
So I began teaching classes again and coaching couples. So altogether, from our first class together to now, I've been coaching couples or teaching classes for 30 years and written a total of 8 books.
Wow. Impressive. Very impressive. And how beautiful that it all started from the little seed of you and your husband really, really struggling. And then, as you said, difficult to find help. And then you did find something that worked so well. And then you became an expert on it, even on your own. I mean, this is an amazing story. And 30 years.
30
I
years.
can't I can't imagine how many marriages are together because of you and happily, you know?
I, I think I've coached or taught it several hundred couples. I never kept track of the numbers, but
Yeah. Yeah.
with
And
pretty good results.
yeah, and there's such a ripple effect to that, because it's not just the couples that you've helped, but it's their children,
Oh,
right?
so glad you brought that up because that gives me goosebumps. It's the ripple effect that I care about the most. I don't want any child growing up in a home where parents are fighting. I don't want any child to be raised in an emotionally barren home the way I was.
Hmm.
And the fun part for me is when a couple grabs the skills and they're working hard at using them, and then they turn around and begin using them with their children or teaching them to their children. I've got to tell you the best story.
Oh, good, good. That's what I want to hear.
The wife was raised in an Italian family where they were fighting all the time. There was always yelling. The husband tended to withdraw emotionally, which only made her more angry. So
Hmm.
they fought a lot. And they started seeing me. And when they would leave to see me, their 6-year-old son asked them, "Where are you going?" "Well, we're going to a class to learn how to stop fighting." So he called it the fighting class. And
Ah,
a few weeks later, the couple was in their living room talking quietly, and their 6-year-old walked in and said, "What's going on?" And the dad said, "We're just talking." And the 6-year-old said, "You guys are doing really good. You hardly ever fight anymore."
oh, so sweet. Oh,
That
amazing.
little boy and his 3-year-old sister are being raised in a home very different than they
Hmm.
would have experienced without the couple being so committed to changing their skills.
Yeah, that's amazing. I
Yes,
I feel blessed because I'm learning so much from you, and I've had other people on my podcast. It's interesting how many people who help people with their relationships and communication and everything. And I'm picking up so much from all of you, and it's so wonderful because it is, as you said, it's not just about our romantic relationships, it's how we communicate with our children. Maybe even we can take it into the office, how we communicate. Because think about that, if you're communicating at work and you're not doing it in a respectful way, I'm sure you're not getting the outcome that you want from people or building the relationships you want at work.
I've had so many of my clients give me examples of how they began using the listening skill at work,
Mhm.
or delivering a message in respectful language, and how it's turning the environment, their work environment, improving the work environment.
Now, you mentioned speaking in a respectful way. What is the listening lesson?
Let's let's see. When there's fighting going on, there's two people talking and nobody's listening.
Okay.
So I have to, if Jim used to ask our classes, who's the smartest one when a fight is going on? And they would look kind of dumbfounded. And he'd finally say, "It's the one who stops talking and begins listening."
Oh, good.
And that is, we all have what I call a 2-year-old inside. 2-year-olds aren't real good at being generous or listening. 2-year-olds want the candy right now and will throw
Right.
a tantrum if they don't get it.
Right. Hmm.
Well, even though we're in adult bodies, we all have a 2-year-old inside. I want you to listen to me, and then I'll listen to you.
Hmm.
The more mature adult frontal cortex part of our brain will
Hmm.
say, "That doesn't work. Stop and listen. And when you listen, repeat back what you understand the other is saying,
Right.
to make sure that you understand it correctly, because
Right.
so many fights are triggered or escalated by misunderstandings. I
Yes.
interpret what you say. I take
Yes.
it personally. I'm
Yeah.
not really I'm not really focused on understanding where you're coming from.
Hmm.
So the person that can be adult enough or mature enough to
Hmm.
stop begin listening and repeating back changes the whole dynamic of the
Right.
conversation. It stops
That's,
the
yeah.
fight immediately.
And it's so good as you're describing it, because if you're listening, knowing that you need to repeat back what they said, and so you really need to understand it, you're not doing that thing, which I see many people do, in that they're just listening, waiting to
Yeah.
give their, right? I mean, so this causes where you actually do need to be listening. That's so good.
Well, most of us, when we are silent listening, we're
Mm-hmm.
formulating our rebuttal. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we're figuring out what our reply is
Mm-hmm.
going to
Mm-hmm.
be and how to prove the other person wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't adult listening. That's a 2-year-old mani-
Yes.
manipulating the
Yes.
conversation.
Yes. And what do you think about this idea? Because it seems to work well for me, is asking the other person for more than 15 minutes. Like sometimes I like to say to someone, would it be okay if we wait 24 hours to have this conversation? Because I found that for me and other people, the thing that we're so upset about or heated up, a full day later, it just has no, I don't know, fuel or fire. There's no there's not as much upset, and you're able to have a calm conversation. Is that a good skill to have, or do you think that you need to resolve things
I
in the,
recommend never going beyond 24 hours.
okay,
Like if you've had an upset at 9 o'clock at night, don't try to resolve it at 9 o'clock at night. None of us
right,
are at our best.
right,
But you do set a time the following day, a specific
right,
date and
right,
time to
right.
resume the conversation. Now,
Hmm.
24 hours is great as long as you are not using the 24 hours to nurse your hurt feelings.
Right, right. No, no, no. Yeah,
It doesn't work.
yeah.
You need to use the 24 hours to do things that calm you, that
Right.
literally calm you down. And
Hmm.
times that I've recommended to some people, use that time to write a nasty letter, whatever you want to say, but write it down and then burn it.
Burn it, tear it up, destroy
Like
it. Right,
get
right,
that negative energy out of your body
right.
because anger is such a powerful emotion.
Hmm.
It has
Hmm.
so much powerful energy. And sometimes you can't just tell yourself to calm down. The
Hmm.
anger needs a way to vent, like a volcano. Like, okay, vent by screaming into a pillow, vent by going for a walk around the block,
Hmm.
vent by writing a nasty letter.
Hmm.
Do whatever works for you. I journaled a lot. I
Yeah.
had volumes of journals
Volumes of journal.
during
Oh, that's so.
the bad years, but it's being deliberate
Hmm.
about giving yourself access to a practice that will literally help you get rid of that negative energy.
Yeah. Wow, these are such good ideas. Now, I want to have enough time to talk about so your books took you to this coaching, and you've done 30 years of coaching, and now you're involved in TEDx talks. So I want you to share that with us. And how did that come about for you?
Oh, I began contributing articles to Authority Magazine, which is an online magazine that's devoted to only good news. And then I was invited by the editor to be a contributor who would send out interview questions on various topics, and most of mine have to do with relationships. And then when those uh, interviews come back and they're published in Authority magazine, I
Hmm.
contact the author of the the person who replied to the interview and ask them if I can do a brief video interview that is then attached to their article on Authority magazine and Medium magazine. And then Yitzi Weiner, who's the editor, said, you know, the next step is for you to do a TEDx, organize a TEDx. And he
Wow.
made it sound so easy that I jumped at it. And now, you know, a few months later, I'm realizing it's not that easy at all. Although I've been granted a license, we're the first TEDx event to ever be held in my community, which is Murrieta, California. And I've got 8 speakers lined up who have amazing topics. I'm so excited to be promoting them.
Mm-hmm.
Listeners want to find out about it. The website for the event is simply tedxmurrieta.com.
Murrieta.com. And is there a theme to your 8 speakers?
The theme is healing in the 21st century.
So good. Healing in the 21st century. And so they can go to tedxmurrieta.com. And when is the date of that TEDx? If they're
It is February the 5th.
February the 5th, coming up, not long at all. Wow, exciting.
Yeah, there's still a lot to do. Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, and how big will this event be?
This is the first time I've been granted a license, so they give me a limit of 100 attendees.
100
I
attendees.
sell 100 tickets, and that's the limit.
Yeah.
You can buy the tickets on that website.
Okay, tedxmurrieta.com. Wow, you're doing a lot of exciting things in your life. This is wonderful. Is there something that you want to be doing after TEDx? Is there still big dreams ahead for you? What are they?
I'm writing my 9th book,
9th book, okay.
and the title of the book is Divorce Doesn't Work. That's kind of jolting, isn't it?
Yes.
I think that there certainly are marriages that need to end. I'm not questioning that. But in my experience, there are so many marriages that need good skills more than they need a divorce.
Yes.
So I'm making a really strong pitch for marriage education.
Oh, such a great concept. I mean, beautiful. And I think when people are in that anger and that pain of wanting a divorce, some of my friends years ago, when they would be at schools and sharing information, and I knew they had young children. I hated to say this line because it felt cold, but I said to them, if you think you're unhappy now,
Good for you.
just wait until you're divorced with small children, because the pain is going to be so much worse, but they need skills like that you can teach, that you're teaching. So this is wonderful.
I think they need a way to get out of the pain, and the only way they think they have is divorce. But divorce doesn't get people out of pain, it creates generational pain.
Yes.
Not only for them, but for their children. Most people that divorce remarry. Often the new marriage has the same issues, the same level of unhappiness that the first marriage had. That's why second and subsequent marriages have much higher divorce rates than a first marriage. We take our garbage with us.
Right.
And if you're not willing to learn the skills the first time around, then you're going to recreate the same kind of pain in any future relationship, not to mention the pain for the children.
Right. Right. And I'm so glad you're writing this book, Divorce Doesn't Work. When will it come out, do you think?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm 2/3 through writing it, and the plan is that organizing a TEDx event gives me a more national platform.
Yes.
And after the TEDx event, my publicist is going to look for a representative to represent me to the big publishing companies. We'll see what they say. I wanted to make the title as controversial as possible, so it really grabs attention. And
Yes.
I think that by the look on your face, I think the title works.
Yes. And a lot of people need to read it. So that's amazing, which leads to the question that I wanted to ask you, which I think you've answered already, but what is the main characteristic of every healthy, lasting marriage?
Respect is the foundation. Without respect, the feelings of love or being in love dissipate and disappear. With respect, the feeling of loving or being in love keeps being nurtured. It keeps growing.
Yes.
That's why, once in a while I just delight in seeing a much older couple walking down the sidewalk holding hands.
I know, that's so
I
sweet.
know, doesn't it just warm your heart? Well, they're a couple that probably, if I could interview them, have been treating each other with affection and respect for umpteen years.
Wow.
We
Mm,
think being in love is enough, but it's not enough.
yeah. Yeah.
Falling in love is so easy and it's giddy, it's fun,
Hmm.
it energizes us, but it doesn't last over time unless there is respect.
Yes. So such a good lesson here about respect. Just so it's as important as love or more important because
The statistics say that falling in love is a great way to get a relationship off the ground. But the skill that keeps a relationship heading towards success over time is knowing how to manage conflict.
mm,
Because every marriage has conflict, every couple at one point or another will have conflict.
mhm.
And if you don't know how to manage that respectfully, then it eats away at your love.
Right. Wow. You have shared such incredible wisdom with us today and with my listeners. Thank you so much. And I want to remind everybody if they want to get tickets, which I'm sure will sell out quickly because there's only 100 seats, it's tedxmurietta.com, happening February 5th of 2025. And if people want to find you, Nancy, to work with you directly or find out more about what you're doing, is it the www.millionairemarriageclub.com?
Yes.
That's the best place to find you. And it's Nancy Landrum. And is there anything else that you want to share with my listeners?
Just want to thank you for the privilege of being on your podcast. I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to share my message, and I think you're doing such a great job. So keep.
Oh, thank you. I will. And I love the idea that there's going to be somebody out there who listens to this and it helps their relationship. And maybe they even sit down with their spouse and listen to the great skills that you've recommended and suggested today. I know I'm going to step away from this already. Just, I want to be more respectful in my communication with everybody. It's just such a, if you just put that at the forefront, such a beautiful
Yes.
thing. Thanks.
When we go to change a skill, the bottom step is I know something's wrong, but I don't know what it is. The next step is I've learned enough that I know what is wrong, but I'm having trouble changing my habit. So you have to practice a lot. The third step is I know what's wrong and I know how to switch from the wrong way to the right way, and I'm getting better at it. And finally, the final step is I know this new way of operating, new behavior is so clear that I don't even have to really work at it anymore because it's my new normal.
Oh, so beautiful. And then as we who know this skill that you've taught walk around living our life like that, people get to just see it off of us and model it, our children or people at work. So it's such a beautiful thing how it spread, as you said, the ripple effect, right?
Yes. In fact, that's the name of one of the chapters in the new book.
Oh, good, 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 good. All right, everybody. Well, you can find Nancy at the millionairemarriageclub.com, just millionairemarriageclub.com. And I will put all of that in the description below. And I want to thank everybody for listening today. And go out and whatever dream you have, whatever change you want to make in your life, however you want to improve your marriage or friendship or relationships, go out and do it now, do it now, do it now. Because the worst thing you could do to yourself is not become the person that you could be in this lifetime. Thank you, everybody, for listening.